Hi, it's Sarah Gibson Tuttle, the founder of Olive & June. Can I tell you the one thing that always makes my day better? A fresh manicure. But here's the thing, who has the time or budget to go to the nail salon every week? That's why we created the Olive & June Gel Mani System. It gives you that same glossy, long-lasting mani you get at a salon for so much less. It comes with everything you need, a pro-level LED lamp, salon-grade tools, our damage-free gel polish that lasts up to 21 days. Just prep, paint, cure, and you're good to go. And the best part, it's so easy and super affordable. So skip that $80 salon appointment. Get that salon quality look at home on your schedule. Head to oliveandjune.com/DIYgel20 and use code DIYgel20 for 20% off your first gel mani system. That's oliveandjune.com/DIYgel20. Code DIYgel20 for 20% off your first gel mani system.
Hey friends, it's Nikayla from the podcast Side Hustle Pro. I'm always looking for ways to keep my kids entertained without screens, and the Yoto Mini has been a total lifesaver. My kids are obsessed. Yoto is a screen-free audio player where kids just pop in a card and listen. Hours of stories, music, podcasts, and more, and no screens or ads. With hundreds of options for ages 0 to 12, it's the perfect gift they'll go back to again and again. Check it out at yotoplay.com, YOTOPLAY.com.
The kettle's boiled, Vic.
Great. Perfect timing. Just a dash of milk for me, please, mate.
Here you go. Shall we get started then?
Have you ever woken up on a Sunday morning and said, I'm never drinking again, and then found yourself waving $50 at a barman by happy hour?
Are you wondering why everyone else can stop at 1 while you head to a dodgy after-party with a weird bloke called Disco Dave? If so, it might be time to take a deeper look at your relationship with your reliable social crutch, alcohol.
On each episode, we'll investigate our own dysfunctional dealings with booze and find out if it's possible to stop this deeply ingrained habit before things get too messy.
Yep, we're going to open up a shame shed of humiliating drinking stories to help you understand why waking up from a booze coma each weekend with a kebab sticking out of your top pocket might actually be negatively impacting your health.
Hamish and I are here to delve into what it's like being sober, an unwanted warts and all look into why giving up those cheeky pints or putting down those mummy wines will make you feel happier, help your anxiety and mental health, and turn you into the most sparkly, authentic version of you.
Won't that mean I become boring though, Vic?
Well, Hamish, we'll just have to wait and see. I'm Victoria Vanstone.
I'm Hamish Adams-Cairns.
And this is Sober Awkward.
Jonathan Todd Schwartz was once a towering figure in Hollywood's elite financial circles. As a power entertainment business manager, he was entrusted with managing the wealth of some of the biggest names in the entertainment industry, including Linkin Park, Beyoncé, Mariah, Carey, and Gwyneth Paltrow. But behind the glitz and glamour, Jonathan was hiding a drug and gambling addiction that would drive him to embezzle millions from the very clients he was meant to protect. In 2016, Jonathan's double life would catch up with him when one of his clients, Alanis Morissette, discovered that he had stolen over $4.7 million from her accounts. Jonathan was arrested and sentenced to 6 years in prison. Sober since May of 2016, the Jonathan you will meet today is a very different man, a man on a journey of redemption. He is determined to prove that he is not the defrauding monster he was once labelled, and is aiming to clear his name and reputation, particularly in the eyes of his ex-wife and children. So hello and welcome to the Sober Awkward podcast, Jonathan.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate being here very much. Today's a good day. I only worked a couple hours. Usually I work 7 days a week for multiple hours, so I wanted to relax and be in my Zen mode for you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for only doing 2 hours of work on my behalf. I'm glad to take the credit for that.
Please, thank you.
I wanted to start by asking you to sort of give us a quick definition of what a business manager is, because I'm sure that lots of our listeners won't really be familiar what a business manager does to the stars.
Sure. I was a CPA, and I think, there should be a requirement for business managers to be a CPA, which is a certified public accountant, because there's so many people today that can just call themselves a business manager without really having any initials or professional designation. I think that does a disservice to the clients. But overall, so for example, the way my partnership was structured was there were four of us. We were four partners. We had a entertainment business management boutique firm. And the way that our firm was structured, we had about 75 employees. The makeup of that consisted of bookkeepers. Many of them were bookkeepers. And what do bookkeepers do? So for a client that we represent, whether it's music, film, TV, professional sports, all their checks from their revenue sources, their entrepreneurial endeavors, are sent to us directly to the bookkeeper assigned to them. Bookkeeper deposits their checks, that represents the income, and then the bookkeeper is responsible to pay for all the bills of the client, not just their personal, but also their businesses. So for a touring company, we're paying all the expenses related to the tour costs. For merchandise, we're handling all that, and so on and so forth. And on the personal side, we're handling it like most of your listeners probably pay for their bills. But with entertainers constantly on the road, it's important that they have someone watching their assets and all of their monies. The one thing we didn't do was we did not invest client monies. Those were outsourced to asset managers because our philosophy was we don't have all day to focus just on a portfolio. We want to focus on all the other stuff. As the quarterback for all financial matters, it's quite a fascinating job as long as you don't treat celebrities as by putting them up on a pedestal.
I actually found that particularly interesting about your story. I assume, okay, so he works with musicians. He's either going to be a music buff or he's going to be someone that's taken by the glitz and the glamour of Hollywood. And neither were necessarily true of you. So what did a sort of normal day look like? Is there all this glitz and glamour going on, or do you just sort of choose to swerve those parties and that part of the job?
I think early in my career, before I was actually a business manager, like I was still a young staff accountant, I kind of appreciated being invited into the recording studio and listening to the music. But at the end of the day, clients don't want their business manager around too much. They would speak with us daily because we're handling their finances to some degree, right? But at the end of the day, we're just a professional, one of many professionals that the client assembled for their quality inner circle to handle all the lanes that each professional should be staying in. And for us, it was business management and handling their financial matters. So I really never got caught up in it, particularly when I became a partner at a firm called GSO Business Management. We would go to the client's performances if they asked us to go, just to respect their wishes. I would show up. But the truth is, I had this little designed approach. I would walk into the venue. I'd go and say hi to them in the dressing room. Can't wait to see your show. Many times I stayed, but most times I actually left after I said hello in the first song. And then when they would call me the next day and say, how was the show? I said, oh, it was fabulous. You guys were amazing. Because the truth is, it's not really professional for us to be there unless asked. We're not the entertainment. We're not the talent. As I said earlier, we're just part of the professional team they've assembled. And frankly, I had really mature clients. And so they really weren't into sex, drugs, and rock and roll when I was growing up as a kid. In fact, I share this sometimes. When I first went into the tour bus with Linkin Park, there were 6 members of the band at this time. I went on the bus thinking it's all about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And I walk in there and there's a bunch of 6 nerds playing video games. And I'm like, okay, I guess it's not about sex, drugs, and rock and roll anymore. And that was great because Linkin Park in particular taught me a lot about how to be a business manager based on their expectations. And I was really impressed because without those expectations, I'm not sure I would have been the best version of myself as a business manager. And they really treated each business that they had like a business. And I really respected them. They were family men. And most of my clients were that way, frankly. I was very fortunate, very blessed to work with professionals who stayed professional and had a good balance between work and their personal life with their families. And that was really important for me to have that privilege to work with such special people.
So for the first 6 years that you worked in this industry, you were honest, you were the model professional seemingly, you were earning good money, building up this reputation and signing on these fantastic clients. You were also at that stage not a gambling addict, there was no cocaine addiction either. But one day that would change, where you would effectively borrow $25,000 from Alanis Morissette's account to place a bet. What struck me about that is I was wondering when did it first occur to you to use your client's money instead of your own? You know, you had money at the time. So when did this switch go in your head? You thought, this is quite easy to do. The system is sort of too easy to manipulate, and I'm tempted by that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say the first 15 years of my career, I was straight and narrow and a nerd, you know, and like today I call myself a proud nerd in recovery, but in about 2010 when I placed that first bet and I thought I would just quote unquote borrow the money from Alanis, that 25,000 that you referenced, I didn't even think about like me losing, right? Like who thinks about losing when they place a bet? Well, clearly I lost, and I lost a lot, but given to your question relative to that first bet, that first week of losing 25,000, I don't know what came through my head, to be honest. You know, even in that moment, that first time I quote unquote borrowed, which really translates to steal, I couldn't believe that I did that. The idea was that following week, I was going to continue to bet and make that back, pay Alanis back, and never gamble again. But the way I gambled, like a complete compulsive gambler with this world of grandiosity, and it's just going to take one bet to win it all back, was why I'm called a compulsive gambler, and still very much in recovery and attending my GA meetings weekly. I should have taken it from my account. In hindsight, things are very easy to analyze, but in that dark moment of the addiction starting to creep in, you know, I was never connected to my emotions during that period of time, like most people who struggle with addiction. And I did make a lot of poor choices, and one of the first ones of many was to not take it from my account. Because had I taken it from my account, things would have probably been very different. I mean, the worst case scenario, my wife would have been disappointed at me. But that's a lot better than the consequences of stealing from, 5 clients and so on. And I don't live in my past, but I certainly don't forget my past.
Yeah. Do you think had you won that first bet or even won that second bet and been able to pay her back the following week, things would have gone differently? Or do you think already at that stage it had a hold of you?
From what I know now and understand, both from a clinical perspective, addiction, particularly with gambling, I'd like to say that I would have stopped, but the way that my mind, was and how was programmed from birth to the time I started, and I don't use that as an excuse, but it's a contributing factor. I don't know that I would have stopped, to be honest. I probably would have thought I was a fantastic gambler and tried to keep winning. Who knows? I wasn't at that level of cognitive awareness. I literally was not connected to any emotions, good, bad, or indifferent. And, today I am, and we'll talk about that later, but in that dark period of my life, those 6 years were awful. All I lived in was fear. Each night going to sleep, how am I going to pay these clients back now? What am I going to do? And the reality was inevitably I knew I was going to get caught. And that led me to even darker places. And, the consequences were real. And, I faced them for 6 years and more. Actually, I faced it for almost 10 years, given pre-sentencing, sentencing, coming back into society, being on home confinement for 60 months, followed by 3 years probation. But again, I have no one to blame but myself.
It's interesting in hearing you talk about it. You assume that with a gambling addiction, it would typically fall to someone who gets a massive rush from gambling and loves money and loves the thrill of placing bets. And that wasn't the case for you. You've said you didn't love gambling and you didn't love money. So why do you think it was that it had such a hold of you? Is it just that case of sort of the cliche of always trying to make up what you've lost, or is there something more complex going on?
Absolutely, it was because I was just chasing to win it back. I mean, my hope was I could win it back in the first week, and then the weeks and the months go by, and now I'm into it for a few years, and then it just became really about hopelessness. There was only way to pay it back was to take it from my account. And why didn't I do that? I still don't have a good answer, to be honest. Probably I know for sure that I didn't want to involve my ex-wife. I didn't want to involve my partners. I didn't have the courage to ask for help. I was still very to the outer world. I presented myself like Superman, but deep down inside, I was still dealing with trauma from my childhood and insecure and living that double life that they talk about in the big book. And, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of good answers, and I'm not here to say anything that's not honest or truthful because I practice rigorous honesty today. But I don't know what I would have done. And instead of me asking myself that often, I just know, as a matter of fact, I violated my fiduciary responsibility to my clients. I hurt direct and indirect clients. Direct meaning those that I took from, and indirect that I just embarrassed, even though I didn't take money from them. And I understand. I mean, my name is probably tarnished. I'm probably blackballed from the entertainment space, and I understand that. This platform and other things that I hope to do as passion project will bring me back into that space, but it'll be on my terms, and we'll see what happens. But today I live not for people pleasing and external validation, but for intrinsically motivated for myself and my loved ones.
Mm-hmm. Holding a secret that big for 6 years, I know you said at the worst you were betting every single day, hundreds of thousands of dollars. You mentioned your partner didn't know, or your partners at work, your ex-wife, your family, your friends. You didn't tell anyone. I was curious to know, were there any close shaves during those 6 years? You said you're going to sleep in fear, knowing that at some point this is going to catch up. Were there any moments when you're like, oh my God, I'm 2 years in and I've nearly been caught? Or were you able to sort of weave your way away from close calls for that long?
Yeah, I mean, I say this sometimes, like for Alanis, and the only reason why I talk about Alanis, as you probably are aware, is because she went public with this, and the other 4 or so, I'm going to respect their wishes because they wanted it sealed, their names, and they certainly deserve that respect. So with Alanis, I would see her probably once a month at her home, and I'd bring with me a whole bunch of spreadsheets. Here's your personal bank accounts. Here's your professional ones. Here's the budget to actual spend, both personally and professionally. What are your goals now? Do X, Y, and Z. And every time I went there during that gambling period of 6 years, I was nervous that she would ask for a bank statement or a source document because the Excel spreadsheet that I presented to her would not have reconciled with the bank statement. And so I lived in fear, pulling up and parking outside her house and knocking on that door and praying she was in a good mood. And in hindsight, I wish she was in a shitty mood, excuse my French, and she would have asked me then and there, and I would have been caught sooner, and things would have even been different as well. But that was, and I know people, when they hear me say this, they think I'm cuckoo, but I cared about her, and yet I stole a lot of money from her. So it's hard for people to understand that, and it's even hard for me to try and come up with an explanation other than, that's just part of addiction. And again, not to be used as an excuse, but just as a fact. And so, yeah, it wasn't just not being able to sleep. It wasn't just every time I heard a siren worrying about are they coming to get me. It wasn't checking my phone to see if it was tapped by the FBI. It was just, I was reckless. I was in uber self-sabotage behavior, and I didn't think I was invincible, but on one hand, I didn't get caught, and so I figured I have more time to chase and chase and chase, and before God willing, before I get caught, I'll be able to pay everybody back. The more I thought about that, though, the reality of even doing that had I won it back would have been so hard, because how am I going to give Alanis $4.6 million in cash?
Yeah.
Right? Like, realistically, if I had it, the questions will come. My partners will say, what? So there was really no way out, which is why eventually, toward the tail end, I had a lot of suicidal ideation. And then became dependent on cocaine as a stimulant to kind of keep me going.
So I was interested by that. Do you feel as if the gambling addiction is what triggered the cocaine addiction. The cocaine addiction never would have happened without it, or what? How do you feel like those two are linked?
I think they're linked, not just. I'll try not to talk this early in our podcast, your podcast, about like clinical stuff, and just speak from my heart, from what my mindset was like back then. Literally every day, as I shared earlier, I was living in fear. Knowing that inevitably I was going to hurt countless people, but mostly at the time my wife, my mother, my stepfather, and my 3 beautiful sons, and nightmare after nightmare. And so I couldn't take it anymore. About year 4.5, 5 of this almost 6-year run, I would look myself in the mirror and say, what are you doing? Like, not only are you hurting yourself, but you're hurting your kids, you're hurting your wife. Like, grow up. It's time for you to be an adult and face the consequences. Volunteer yourself to report it to your partners, report it to the clients, accept the consequences. But again, I just didn't have the courage to ask for help. Like, I still believed that I could beat this by one day winning it. And so I turned to cocaine, yes, because I was having those thoughts. And I have heart disease. So, having my heart racing at the pulse it was, and waking up in sweat and wet sheets, it was not healthy. And I'm lucky to be alive. And, thankfully I was able to identify my kids, my mom, my stepfather, but I certainly couldn't identify myself because I wasn't obviously proud of what I was doing.
Mm-hmm. And did the cocaine become a daily thing like the gambling? Were you doing this, waking up, doing it, and then obviously you weren't sleeping anyway because of the fear? Were you just doing it all day, all night?
So yeah, for about 6-7 months, all day, all night, I found myself missing meetings now. I would call my assistant and say, please cancel this meeting. I'm just not going to make it in on time. And then looking forward to closing my door in the office and snorting lines of cocaine just to stop, crying behind closed doors. Like, what am I doing? My father, may he rest in peace, he died in February 2017, and he had a gambling and cocaine addiction. And as you and I both know, there's multi-generational transmission. The disease factor can be transmitted from a generation to another. But I also know that it's a disease, yes, but at the end of the day, I had a choice. And I decided I was the one with my poor choices to not only use substances, which could have killed me, but also to gamble and take money from clients that didn't deserve it. And that's where the choices came in for me. And I'm glad when I got caught. I'm glad I finally got caught. It was a huge relief. When Alanis fired me in 2015 and the bookkeeper said, what do you want me to do? I said, I don't want you to do anything, just give them everything. And that was careless in one hand, because had I cleaned up the general ledger, had I categorized it a little differently, I probably still would have been caught. And maybe all that would have done was buy me more time. But I really wanted to get caught with, in the final year. Because I couldn't, like I said earlier, I didn't have the courage to ask for help and to tell the truth. Mm-hmm. I practiced a lot of manipulation during those periods with the banks. I was dishonest with everybody in my life, and I was just not a good person.
So just to clear up the timeline of that for anyone that's listening, so Alanis effectively fired you, but you hadn't been caught yet. She then goes to join your cousin's business manager company, who's the guy that sort of originally gave you your break. And then when that business manager starts looking at the numbers, they come to you and say, hey, can you explain some of these outgoings? To which you said, here's basically the full story in the numbers, and they figured it out for themselves. There's not a lot of humor in your story, but there is some humor in you trying to con a former FBI agent with a lie detector. So please tell, and it's tragic, but it's funny, and it's sort of the moment where I guess the lie was finally revealed. So please do tell that story, or your mindset going into that lie detector test.
Sure. So when I was with Beyoncé on her Lemonade tour rehearsals in Tampa Bay, and I received a call from my partners at the time, and they said Alanis doesn't know where this $4.6 million what it was used for, and still being in active addiction, still having obviously denial and survival mode. I said she invested in a cannabis business, and I just made that up. And so they said, you need to come back and talk to us. So I told Beyonce that I have to leave for personal reasons. I flew back to Los Angeles, met with them, and they said, unless you could prove this with a signature from Alanis, there's going to be some consequences here. And I said, of course I can get her to sign. I knew darn well I couldn't get her to sign. So what happened was, it was near the time, even though my wife and I were kind of separated, we decided late 15, early 16 to kind of give it a try. And on May 9th was our wedding anniversary, 23-year wedding anniversary. So I took her up to Santa Barbara, and by the way, let me rewind for a moment. I told the partners during that meeting, I said, why don't you just give me a lie detector test? Like I was playing, I call it playing poker. I never played poker really, but I was playing poker in the sense of manipulation and using psychology, right? They didn't think that they would actually say sure and call me out on it, but needless to say, I offered that to them. And that weekend that I was with my wife at the time celebrating, one of my partners called me and they said, you need to come down from Santa Barbara to Beverly Hills and meet with a retired former FBI polygrapher, one of the best in the business. And I said, hung up. At this point, I was, using cocaine in the hotel room. My wife didn't know. And I hung up and I started to research how to beat a lie detector test using the internet. And I became really confident because that's what cocaine did. It made me feel confident. And that was the moment where I had to tell my wife, all what I've been doing for 6 years, because she didn't know a single thing. Nobody knew. I hid this from everyone, which made my emotional state even much worse, and catastrophizing every day and future tripping and negative thinking and living in fear. So when I told her, she naturally was in shock. I said, tomorrow I'm going to leave in the morning and I'll come back at night and stay here, go to the spa. We'll have a nice dinner when I get back. So I drive down the hour-and-a-half drive, bring a bunch of cocaine with me, and this day is May 8th, 2016, because it's the last day that I used any substances and placed a bet with a bookie. So walk into the polygrapher's office. I'm definitely high on cocaine. I'm shaking, which you don't want to shake pre a polygraph test, because the moment you shake is the moment you fail. So I put my feet up on his desk, I often say, and I had a lot of arrogance when I walked in that room because I Googled the night before how to beat it. So I'm thinking I'm Superman and I'm going to beat this test, and why not even do cocaine, because I'll still beat it. And I sit down and we start talking for a couple hours, and I thought I was the one establishing this great rapport with him, but I did not pay attention to the fact that that's his job, is to make me believe that he's establishing the rapport. Needless to say, he started the test. I left, and I called my wife, and I said, I'm on my way back. Let's have dinner tonight. The moment I got back to the hotel, I tried to access on my laptop the office software, and I was denied. So I called my attorney, and he said, Jonathan, you failed that test worse than anybody in this former FBI agent's career. And that was the moment where I said, what's the next step? He said, the next step? You're facing 23 years in federal prison. What do you mean the next step? You need to come see me. And in gratitude, I'm grateful that he kind of negotiated with the prosecutor a plea agreement. The plea agreement was for 4 to 6 years. I didn't know how many years I was going to get when I walked into the courtroom a year later on May 3rd, 2017.
Hey friends, it's Nikayla from the podcast Side Hustle Pro. I'm always looking for ways to keep my kids entertained without screens, and the Yoto Mini has been a total lifesaver. My kids are obsessed. Yoto is a screen-free audio player where kids just pop in a card and listen. Hours of stories, music, podcasts, and more, and no screens or ads. With hundreds of options for ages 0 to 12, it's the perfect gift they'll go back to again and again. Check it out at yotoplay.com. YOTOPLAY.com.
Raise your hand if you want your nails to look perfect all the time. Me too. I'm Sarah Gibson Tuttle, the founder of Olive & June, and this is exactly why we created the Gel Mani system. We wanted to make it possible for everyone everywhere to give themselves a beautiful manicure at home. With our tools and our gel polish that lasts up to 21 days, Each manicure with our system comes out to just $2. That's right, $2. No more $60, $70, $80 salon trips that take hours. Now you can paint your nails on your time and love them more than ever. And by the way, when people ask you where you got your nails done, you're going to proudly brag that you did them yourself. And here's a little something extra. Head over to oliveandjune.com and get 20% off your first gel mani system with code DIYGEL20. That's code DIYGEL20 for 20% off your first mani system at oliveandjune.com/DIYGEL20.
Our listeners love two things. They love storytelling, which you're very good at, and they love to hear about how people got sober during their hardest time. Now, in that year timeline that you've just described, between effectively getting caught and walking into a courtroom, you were able to beat both your addictions to gambling and cocaine. And I was curious to know how you managed to do that in what must have been one of the darkest years of your life. How did you approach it?
Well, your listeners aren't going to like the first part of my answer, because the first part is I decided, let me go enroll at Bet Teshuva, which in California is known for a gambling and substance use treatment center. Mm-hmm. And so I went there and I participated in the IOP program, but I didn't really participate in the IOP program for the right reason. I had participated because they also had an alternative sentencing department, and I wanted to use that department to write a letter on my behalf to mitigate perhaps my sentence. Well, that didn't work. But the moment came when, probably a couple months after admitting myself into the IOP program, I was working on the 12 steps with my sponsor. And the first step, as you know, is, admitting you are powerless. You're experiencing powerlessness and unmanageability. And I said to my sponsor, I just don't understand these instructions for step one. You mean my life is unmanageable and you think I'm powerless over it? And I will never forget and love him forever for this. He said, Schmuck, you don't think your life's unmanageable? You're facing 23 years in federal prison. You don't think your life is powerless? I said, very good point. It's time for us to get started. I'm about ready to immerse myself in the 12 steps, and I'll do it one day at a time. And the one day at a time was literally one day at a time. Thankfully, he saved my life. We're not in the sponsor-sponsee relationship today, but we're very close friends. And I chose a wonderful sponsor who guided me through these steps and prepared me on my road to maintain a sustainable recovery. And so how I built my own confidence up and built a strong recovery was completing the 12 steps before I went into prison. In prison, they had AA meetings. I didn't attend all of them, but I attended many of them. But being in prison allowed me time to reflect and to understand that I hurt a lot of people. And for me to one day leave prison, to earn back the trust of all those that I hurt, but specifically my brother, my 3 sons, my mother, my stepfather, and all my partners, etc., my staff, I can no longer do that through the words that come out of my mouth. I get to do it through my daily next right action. And so I was preparing myself each and every day to start to adopt pro-recovery behaviors and thoughts even in prison. And when I came out, I got a job. In April of 2020, I was released early because of COVID. I got a job at Dunkin' Donuts because no one would hire a felon. That increased my humility that I came home with. I still needed to increase it another notch or two. I got fired because I wasn't mopping the floors or the countertops well, and from there I took another job and ultimately got fired from that job. And then that was like my higher power, and I had a very strong relationship, and my higher power sent me a message in mid third quarter 2020, and he said, it's time for you, Jonathan, to go to addiction studies school, get your KDAC, go to grad school, become a marriage and family therapist. So I did that. And today I am a therapist and a program director at a luxury detox and residential. And the 12 steps mean everything to me today. I'm very involved in Gamblers Anonymous. I sponsor a lot of people. And helping my brothers and sisters in the program is the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life. As you said earlier, money didn't buy me happiness when I had it, because I had never addressed until I was 46 my childhood trauma. I'll be 56 in December. And now that I have no unresolved issues, all of my trauma is resolved. I'm my authentic self. I try to show people how to be transparent, how to hold themselves accountable, how to be their authentic self, how to have the courage to ask for help, things that I didn't do when I was in active addiction. And so the simple formula is just do the antithesis of everything I used to do during active addiction and bring that forward today. But the beauty of working as a therapist is I can establish almost in the first session instant rapport, because therapists can self-disclose when they think it can benefit the client. And my life experiences combined with my academia, they really relate to, and it's just so fun and natural to be trying to help them. And you know this as well as I do. As much as I would love to say I can help everybody, it's humanly impossible. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'm not the best fit for a client, and I can accept that today.
Which have been the most challenging days of your sobriety? Was it in jail? There's no secret that drugs are available in jail, or was it before you went in or since? Which have been those days you're like, this is one of the tough ones? Honestly,
when I went to prison, the first 6 months I cried. I was probably the only one that cried every day. And a gentleman came up to me and he said, you got to stop crying, because I was counting the days. 6 years, 72 months seemed like an eternity. And he said, you have to stop. If you keep counting the days, you're going to not be present and you're going to drive yourself bananas. And he was right. And so I decided to count the Super Bowls. So I'm just counting every Super Bowl. You're right, they were gambling. There's a lot of contraband of drugs brought in. But after I stopped crying during that first 6 months, I really spent a lot of time reflecting on myself and my past and the poor choices that I made. And I was not going to get caught up bringing in anything or participating in anything, because the last thing I wanted to do is call my youngest son on the phone and say, Dad's not coming home when he's supposed to. I received a disciplinary infraction, and now my stay is another 8 months. Mm. So I chose to truly, honestly, be a nerd. I was a nerd in prison. I didn't get in any fights. I kept my head down. I read a lot of books. I tried to better myself. I ran a victim impact program in prison to help inmates understand the victims of their criminal behavior. So for me, there was no other moment than just realizing that I cannot afford the negative consequences if I were to relapse. And that includes, but not limited to, my time in prison. And it certainly carries to this moment I'm speaking with you now. Mm-hmm. I have strong self-awareness, and I'm risk adverse today.
You mentioned earlier that you don't live in your past, but you don't forget about it either. What is your relationship with shame? Are you empathetic to the person that you were? Do you find yourself beating yourself up? How do you reflect on it?
When I first came home, I played the victim role. For probably 9 months, I was crying again. I love to cry, as you can tell in my story. I think I actually encourage clients to cry, because what that says to me is that they're connecting with their emotions. And for me to cry the way that I cry, in a cathartic way, for me is just further proof that I can really connect with my own emotions today. And that's what I want to model for clients. But I did play the victim role for 9 months. Woo me, pity me. But then I realized, the reason why, just so to be clear, because I think it's important to add some context to that. When I came home, I was supposed to be picked up by a woman who I was going to spend the rest of my life with. And when I was on the phone with her countless times, and when she visited a handful of times during my time, the inmates would say, Jonathan, you hear a guy talking every time you're on the phone with her. You don't think she's cheating on you? I said, no, of course not, because I became codependent on her, right, as someone I can talk to and have something to look forward to. So anyway, when I got released early because of COVID, she picked me up reluctantly, and the first thing she said was, don't give me a hug, and you're just going to sleep on the couch. And then I realized, after sleeping on the couch for 2 months, that she was cheating on me. But because I was on probation, I had to stay in that apartment complex, because that was the physical address that I reported to the probation office. And when was able to get a studio apartment. Unfortunately, that studio apartment looked at her balcony. So I could see her and her boyfriend there for 9 months.
Oh, God.
But I could laugh, and I can laugh about it now, but honestly, my higher power did this on purpose. I really believe that. And the purpose of the message was, Jonathan, you cheated on your wife. Now you know what it's like to cheat on a woman, but also to be cheated on. And that was a moment when I said, I will never be disrespectful by cheating with any woman that I'm fortunate enough to have in my life going forward. And that honestly, truthfully, and wholeheartedly, I believe that was a lesson from my higher power. I needed to know that. I realized in active addiction that what I was doing was wrong, right? But I didn't change my behaviors and patterns. And so these messages from my higher power continue to allow me today to compare and contrast. I give silly examples, but maybe because I'm a nerd, they're so silly. But like I often use like the example of like I go to Starbucks, I'm waiting in line in active addiction. There's an elderly woman and a man in front of me, and then there's this jock in front of me, and I'm growing really impatient. The elderly couple is spending 10 minutes looking at their phone and thinking in their purse and papers and figuring out what they're going to order. And I've got such an ego in active addiction. I'm like, come on, lady, come on, man, let's go. I want my coffee too. Well, today when I go in line at Starbucks, although it's quite expensive these days to buy a latte, I've learned to be patient. And I've learned that they're just as important as I am. And so why I bring that example up is because in those moments, and I do this on a daily basis, not specific to Starbucks, but any of my behaviors in a given day, is I compare and contrast my behavior today to that example I just gave you in my active addiction. And that's a way where I can measure my own progress. I don't care if I'm 9.5 years sober today. Yes, I'm proud of it, but I'm just as susceptible as someone with 1 or 2 days when I wake up in the morning. I cannot be complacent in my program. If I become complacent, I fear I could relapse. And so that's why I'm a nerd, because I'm really proud of being in recovery. If I could put another tattoo on my body, it'd be in my forehead saying a proud sobriety. But obviously I'm not going to do that. But really, I'm proud. So I don't live in shame, because I'm proud of who I've become and who I'm becoming. I've learned to forgive myself. And I think that's really a vital part of someone's recovery plan, at least mine for sure. I'm really proud of who I've become. I really am, and who I'm becoming. And it doesn't mean, again, that's why I say I don't forget the harm that I caused, but I also don't live in it, because then I would carry guilt and shame, and then I wouldn't be kind to myself. I wouldn't have a self-care part of my recovery plan, because I wouldn't care about myself. I have a healthy version of self-esteem. The humility is way above it today, and it's because I run a strong program. And for me, that's daily. I mean, I can't tell you how excited I am on Tuesday nights when I go to my GA meeting and I get to hug all the brothers and sisters in that room, a room that shares a lot of commonality with me, and there's no judgment. And those are the people I surround myself with today.
Anyone that has lived through an addiction like you have, it costs them a lot. For you, it costs you financially, it costs you your career, your reputation, your freedom. Probably most poignantly is the trust and the love of your friends and family and business partners. How have you gone rebuilding those bridges?
When I got caught and sentenced, from that day through the end of probation, I was prohibited from reaching out to my former partners, staff, or clients. Now one of my partners passed away 1.5 years, 2 years ago, and unfortunately passed away while I was on probation. I would have loved to have attended, but I know for sure I would not have been welcomed, and I understand and accept that today. But I wish I was allowed to have made amends to him, because I hurt him, and he's the last person of the partners I wanted to hurt. He gave me an opportunity, as did my other partners, to come and work for them, and they really mentored me, and they gave me all the tools I needed, and I hurt them very much. And I'll never be able to tell him that, but I will tell the other partners that my sponsor believes today that if I were to make amends to them, it might cause them further harm. And so we're on a pause with respect to that. I would also like to reach out to 5 of the clients that I embezzled monies from, including Alanis, but for sure it would probably hurt Alanis. There are probably a couple clients who it wouldn't hurt so much. So I am prepared to make amends before the end of this calendar year to the 4 other direct victims of my crime. And again, as you know as well as I do, making amends is without an expectation, or that it's not about me seeking forgiveness. It's just really being done for myself so I can forgive myself even more than I already do. And it's a way where I can let them know that I'm aware that I hurt them, and these are the areas that I believe I harmed you, and did I leave anything out? And not in any of the amends do I apologize, but a lot of people say, what do you mean you don't apologize? I'm acknowledging how I hurt someone. Maybe that's sort of a form of apologizing, but that's not the intent behind making amends.
I think many of our listeners either listen to us because they are sober and want to sort of feel like they're part of the community and can maintain that sobriety, or they switch on when they are at their darkest moment looking for inspiration. In your darkest moment, had you switched on to a podcast called something like Sober Awkward, is there any one thing that you could have heard, a sentence that might have changed things for you, a message that would have struck a chord that you would perhaps want to tell our listeners today, or is it not as simple as that?
The message, honestly, is I think there's the 3 largest coping skills that I incorporate into my own recovery that I also ask clients to adopt. It first starts with what I said earlier. I mean, gosh, I wish I could have asked for help. I love Brene Brown. I want to be the male version of Brene Brown. I want to tour the world after a book and movie comes out, and I want to share the message to men specifically to be vulnerable, have the courage to ask for help, because there's no machismo anymore, not in recovery. If you have humility, or you still want to grow your humility, it's time for us to ask for help. And I can ask for help today. And so that's the number one thing that I would love your audience to take from this. Like, you're worth it. I know that's a cliche used in a lot of meeting rooms, 12-step meetings, but it's true. Like, you're worth it. For all of you struggling today with substance use or mental health, I'm here to tell you that you're worth asking for help. You may not feel that way about yourself, but part of this program in early recovery is recognizing that your will got you to where you are today. So follow someone else's will, which usually is the higher power that you're following. So my will got me in a lot of trouble, so I asked my higher power to help me, frankly, throughout the day. That's 1. 2, it goes back to that emotion and self-awareness. I have very strong self-awareness. So when some of my defects of character rise to the surface, and I had almost 100 plus defects of character when I was working in steps, but today if I see procrastination, or I see impatience, or if I see an ego coming up and surfacing, I can literally course correct that through my self-awareness, followed up by positive reality-based self-talk. So that's like the second of the 3rd coping skill. And then frankly, the 3rd one is just doing the next right thing. That's how simple this program is. Well, I'm not thinking about tomorrow when I'm here speaking with you right now. I'm thinking about this moment. I'm emotionally present today. And that's the 3rd gift I've given myself, because in my reflection, I realized I was physically present for my kids and ex-wife now, but I really wasn't emotionally present at all during my 6 years of active addiction. And today, I really place a strong value on being emotionally present with people. They deserve to be heard, and I want them to know I'm hearing them.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I would love to finish just by asking about this next chapter in your life. So you mentioned you're sort of now professionally helping gambling addicts and really other forms of addiction, and the book and the film. How much can you tell us about the book and the film that you just referred to in passing there?
Yeah, my hope is that right now my finances are pretty tight, so I can't finish the book yet. One day I hope the book will be complete. I don't want to, in recovery, I don't create an expectation. My goal, rather, is to have a book out as soon as I could retain a ghostwriter to complete the book. I've had several meetings about a movie. One of them I've rejected because they wanted me to talk bad about my clients, and I won't do that. That's not pro-recovery, and that would have paid me a significant amount of money. I'm not going to compromise my integrity and values anymore like I did during active addiction, and so no client of mine deserves for me to disclose anything that they told me in confidence. So I turned that down. So I believe if I have a successful book when it comes out, God willing, that it'll be picked up by a studio one day who finds my story interested. And it's going to be like a Wolf of Wall Street on steroids because I did a lot of bad things, but it's also going to have a lot of recovery in it. And because that's more important than the war stories. And my passion would be to follow it up and tour and help countless people around the globe understand the importance of, as I said, asking for help and how they too can become resilient and how they too can live an honest life and earn back the trust of loved ones. And those things are really important messages for me. And I pray one day that I'll be able to fulfill my promise to myself to spread the message around the globe.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Now, yours is a story that it's easy to draw inspiration from. You know, it got dark and awful things happened. You found a way out and are trying to do right. And I think, you know, obviously most of our listeners are sober from alcohol, but I always encourage anyone to learn from other forms of addiction because I think they all have so much in common. So I'm grateful for you coming on and sharing your life lesson and what you've learned along the way.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
If you're questioning your relationship with booze, you're struggling to moderate, or your hangovers are causing anxiety, it might be time to reach out for some support.
Yeah, just talk to a mate about how you're feeling, contact a local doctor, find an AA or sobriety group. Vic's got one.
Yeah, just head to www.cuppa.community.
Remember, if you're questioning yourself, it might be time to seek support.
Even though this journey can be awkward, it is definitely worth it. And if you've enjoyed the Sober Awkward podcast, don't forget to review it, rate it, and share it with your mates.
Do they have to share it with their mates?
Yeah, of course they do. I'm not doing this for nothing, Hamish. Bloody hell.
How do they share it?
I don't know, just write it on the document.
Hey friends, it's Nikayla from the podcast Side Hustle Pro. I'm always looking for ways to keep my kids entertained without screens, and the Yoto Mini has been a total lifesaver. My kids are obsessed. Yoto is a screen-free audio player where kids just pop in a card and listen. Hours of stories, music, podcasts, and more, and no screens or ads. With hundreds of options for ages 0 to 12, it's the perfect gift they'll go back to again and again. Check it out at yotoplay.com. YOTOPLAY.com.
We all love our pets, but we love to travel too. And sadly, they can't always come along for the ride. Don't stress. Trusted House Sitters connects you with verified sitters who will stay in your home and care for your pets, all in exchange for a place to stay on their travels. So, while you're off exploring, your pets get to stay safe and happy at home, right where they belong. Find a loving in-home pet sitter today at TrustedHouseSitters.com.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my site softer?
Can I make my site firmer?
Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. Your Sleep Number setting. Enjoy personalized comfort for better sleep night after night. It's our Black Friday sale. Recharge this season with a bundle of cozy, soothing comfort. Now only $17.99 for our C2 mattress and base plus free premium delivery. Prices higher in Alaska and Hawaii. Check it out at a Sleep Number store or sleepnumber.com today.
So, as you probably know, my comedy memoir, 1,000 Wasted Sundays, is officially out. All my magnificent fuck-uppery in one awkward hit. If you'd like to get your hands on a copy, it's now available from all good bookstores.
We always say all good bookstores, don't we?
Yeah.
Are there bad bookstores?
No, it's probably ones with moody sellers.
Oh, yeah, really depressed librarian folk.
Yes,
Okay,
good. So there are probably some, but we're only storing it in the good ones.
It's only made it into the goodies.
You can also get it from all good online retailers. The print version and ebook are out now, and the audiobook will be available in March. I've been writing my memoir for 5 years. It will make you laugh, cry and cringe, and hopefully inspire a few people to reconsider their relationship with booze. If you love the podcast, then I think you'll love the book, even if I do say so myself. Hamish has read it. What did you think?
I feel like I know a little bit too much about you now, to be honest, Vic. Look, I really loved it. It was hilarious and surprisingly moving, but I feel like I've seen you naked in a literary sense.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's worrying.
Yeah. From an emotional point of view, seriously, it wobbled my teeny weeny wooden heart, Vic.
Okay.
My teeny little wooden heart.
Well, his wooden heart is broken. Anyway, so if you do manage to get your filthy mitts on a copy, please do me a favour and head to goodreads.com and give me a review. Doing that will help me get it out there to those that need a bit of sober support. So there you have it. My story, unwanted warts and all. Come and get awkward with me.
Not to be too demanding or anything, but seriously, go and buy it now.
Yeah, go and buy it. Go and buy it right now.
Yeah, don't just tell your friends, buy it, and then buy your friends one or two.
Yeah, don't give them a copy, buy it. Yeah.
And you know what? Don't be careful where you store it. If you lose it, you can always buy another 5.
Buy another one.
Yeah.